Hi, I'm Rajendra, DN, Ravi. Nice to see you, Rajesh, KPG.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Bimlin.
Good morning.
Happy to see you.
Long time.
Good morning, sir. Yes, sir.
Hi. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning,
Good
sir.
morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
सर आपका
Sir, mute.
माइक म्यूटेड है.
Mute.
सर नेरुकर सर आपका माइक म्यूटेड है. ठीक है.
I don't understand this technology. Why does it always start with a mute to you?
So
I
sorry.
don't understand this. But anyway, nice to see all old friends. Hi, Ravinder. How are you?
Sir, good. How are you, sir?
But this is all most of the Sindri mafia, or what is it? Except Bimlin Raja, who is not that. I know.
I am also from not Sindri.
I know that. I know both of you are not that. You are IIT Kanpur, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Look, my HR knowledge is still reasonably okay.
Yeah. It was always good, sir.
Sir, Sindri ka to I think amongst these members, I am the only one.
Acha. Okay. So, Vimal, where are you now? Delhi, Mumbai?
Sir, just now I have reached Silvassa 5 minutes ago.
Silvassa, well done. What? Now?
I am setting up a factory here.
Acha, okay. No, good. Normally people go to Silvassa and Daman, etc. For what purpose, you know?
Yeah, I know. We might eventually set up that also, but it's okay.
So, okay. I'll talk to you later. Okay.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, DN, sir, we can start this program.
Rajesh, we like to see your face also once in a while, KPG, and then we can put.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Then we can put up the videos. Fine.
Yes, yes.
Sir, just give me a minute. I'm
Thank
just
you,
inquiring, discussing why he has not. Have
Hi, KPG.
Good morning. Yeah.
Morning.
So just a couple of minutes. Dr. DK Singh and Dr. Prakash is also joining. There had been some difficulty in joining through the link. So,
And also there are students from the Sindri, is it?
yes, sir.
Have they joined?
Yeah, Dr. Prakash has joined.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Yeah, Professor Singh has also joined.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Dr. Singh has joined. So, with your permission, can we start the function? I would request Prakash to introduce Dr. Singh and then we'll start the function.
Sir, we should wait for 5 minutes. I think others are joining.
Okay, okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, DN does have a Dr. Singh. I suggest that let us start. And I think
Yeah.
whatever the problem has happened, we will deal with that later. Because I understand that we have sent multiple links for the same meeting. So anyway, these are the learning. So my request is that let us start this meeting.
Good morning to one and all. I'm Professor Prakash Kumar, Head Production and Industrial Engineering and Professor in charge of our entrepreneur cell. Uh, Good morning to all dignitaries, guests, delegates, and my dear participants. I feel privileged to extend my warm welcome to all present here for the kickoff of this national hackathon. This hackathon is an innovative and joint initiative by IPE and Department of Production and Industrial Engineering and ECell of RBIT Sindri to promote startup culture in our state as well as our country. I'm thankful to IPE for such a great initiative. As far as VIT Sindri is concerned, we are ranked between 6 to 25 in Atal ranking for institution innovation achievement and 3-star rating in IIC Institution of Innovation Council for the last 2 years. Currently, we have 5 incubators in our campus and more than 10 in the pipeline. As far as this hackathon is concerned, it aims to inspire young minds, budding entrepreneurs, and professionals to work together as a team and come up with some innovative solution to help integrated steel plant. This hackathon can provide the right ambience where intellect and experimentation can be synergized to form a formidable solution for the steel industry. Before proceeding, I consider it a great honor to welcome Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. H.M. Nirurkar, ex-MD Tata Steel Limited. Other guest of honors, Mr. Bimlin Raja, ex-MD Tata Steel, UK ex-CEO of Ambuja Cement, Mr. Venkatraman Srinivas, CEO William Foundation, Mr. Sid Sinha, Mr. J. Arora, Mr. Rajesh Jha, uh, Mr. D.N. Jha, and our director and all the participants. As we all are well aware of the condition of the steel industry in India today and the problem faced by the industry is facing problems like low potential utilization, low productivity, and shortages of metallurgical coal, etc. In this hackathon, student or professional will develop new and innovative solution using digital engineering solution around three major challenges faced by the integrated steel plant of India in iron making area. That is environmental issues, capital efficiency and benchmark operation practices. This hackathon will be held in two phases. In the first phase, participants will generate ideas to address these challenges, and in the second phase, the participants will be required to develop the selected ideas into business model. Hope and wish this event is going to be a successful one. I welcome you all once again. Over to Director Sir for the proceeding. Director Sir.
Very good morning, Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. H.N. Nerurkar Sahab, distinguished guest, Bimlendu Jha Sahab, Srinivas Sahab, Amrendra Ranjan Sahab, Sinha Sahab, Rajesh Jha Sahab, and organizing committee coordinators, D.N. Jha Sahab from the IP, Dr. Prakash Kumar from the BIT Sindri, all faculty members, all the dignitaries and students, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to me to welcome the team of the IP, BIT Sindri and all the participants in this National Hackathon program. Sir, we are living in era of 21st century, and as a faculty, as a director, what I feel that a student of this generation believes in cut, copy, and paste. There is a paradigm shift. Gone are the days where there was a chalk and talk culture. But this generation is student, they want to sense it, they want to execute the ideas, and this digital platform have provided a good opportunity to solve many of the problems. Earlier, so this hackathon, what we call this hackathon is called a problem with an opportunity. So at the outset, I am thankful to the IP and the BIT Sindri team to organize this national hackathon and that to the solve the problem of the iron making to make the country rich in iron making process. Just I would like I would like to throw some light on the hackathon activity. What Professor Kumar has said that our incubation center is now ranked as top 25 best incubation center so far as the government institution is concerned. We have in our campus the software technology park also. What we need a merger of experienced people like you. So I am thankful to DN Jha Sahab, Rajesh Jha Sahab and their team that the IP has come forwards to share their experiences and expertise to motivate the student to come forward in this area and solve many of the problem what the country is facing and grab this opportunity to convert into a business. A country cannot be powerful unless until it is not economically powerful and when the export will improve, then after we can see that we are a developed country. So this hackathon is going to provide the student and all the participants a competency, consensus level, and the confidence level. So hackathon also provides a diverse and dynamic group of the builders, coders, and designers. They know how to programming in this modern age to become a second-hand skills for this new generation. So while hackathons are solution-based, they also serve as an opportunity to both extrovert and the introvert people to come on the same platform to develop the interpersonal skill. So the purpose of this IP, what Professor Kumar has already mentioned, that to provide a digital engineering solution for integrated steel plants in the area of iron making. So India is emerging as a major player in the global steel industries. So the country has a vast reserve of iron ore and the coal, so the two major imports and the cost drivers for the steel industry. But both these inputs suffer from quality issues, creating challenges for attainment of benchmark performance. Since international quality of the raw material is superior, the ability of know-how to deal with the challenges for the cost-effective performance is scarce. So additionally, for integrated steel plants to be a future-ready, energy and environment issue assume significant. For India, steel business to be competitive globally, total cost of ownership merit is under consideration. So it is in the above context that IPE, in collaboration with BIT Sindri, has initiated steps to facilitate integrated steel plants attain benchmark, sustainable and profitable operational performance in the area of iron making for integrated steel plants. So IP, so BIT Sindri is an engineering college with excellent academic heritage of more than 70 years. It is also not ranked and many of the programs are already accredited, have proven the track records of achieving benchmark performance in operation, maintenance, engineering. So I think in the coming days, we have already organized a hackathon sponsored by ACC Cements. We have provided a solution to the ACC steel industry. So I hope this hackathon, they will come, the many teams will come with a solution which will be useful for the steel industry and this collaboration of IP and BIT Sindri, I am confident enough your vast experience and expertise. Our student wants now excitement. They want to work on a real life problem. That is a problem, there is a gap in this academia. But with this collaboration, they will be getting a real-time problem and the student of this generation, they have now a greater opportunity to interact with the people like you, solving the many problems. So what the IP will get the benefit because we are having a talented pool of the students and with your guidance, with your mentorship, they will be directly engaged during this academic periods and they will be providing a solution, they will be a problem solver. So industry will directly get ready-made engineers. So with this, once again, I am thankful to the team of the IP, Mr. D. N. Jha Sahab and his team, and Professor Prakash Kumar for organizing this national hackathon. In 2017, the team of DIT Sindri was awarded the second rank in Government of India conducted national hackathon, and Government of India uh, has given 3 lakhs to solve those problems to the student of the DIT Sindri. So with these words, thank you very much, and over to Professor Prakash Kumar and the team of the IBD in Jasa. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would request Amrendra Ranjan to introduce the chief guest and take the function forward.
Thank you, Dean. Uh, our today's chief guest is Mr. Hemant M. Nirurkar. He is the chairman of Messrs. TRL Crossakai Limited, a BTech in Metallurgical Engineering from the College of Engineering, Pune University. Mr. Nirurkar has attended several management courses in India and overseas, including CDEP in France. He is associated with several professional organizations such as Indian Institute of Metals, INS DAT, Institute of Skill Development and Growth, IMA, All India Management Association, and among others. Mr. Nirukar joined Tata Steel on February 1st, 1982 and has held various positions till 2007, including Chief Metallurgist, Senior Division Manager LD1, Deputy General Manager Steel and Primary Mills, General Manager Marketing, Senior General Manager Supply Chain, Vice President Flight Products, Vice President Kalinganagar and Technology, and Chief Operating Officer. He was appointed Executive Director of India and Southeast Asia of Tata Steel Limited since April 9, 2009, and was appointed as Managing Director of Tata Steel Limited on October 1st, 2009. He has over 35 years of experience in the steel industry in various functions. Mr. Nirukar is an executive with multifaceted experience ranging from project execution, manufacturing, quality control, supply chain, and marketing. During his illustrious career, Mr. Nurkar has been conferred with several prestigious awards such as the Tata Gold Medal 2004, FMS DMAT Excellence Award 2002, Steel 80s Award 1990, Sales Gold Medal 1989, Victoria Award 1988, and NMD Award 1987. Over to you, Mr. Nirukar, sir, for your keynote address.
Thank you, Amrana, for this kind introduction. Professor Dr. D.K. Singh, Dr. Prakash Kumar, Mr. R.R. Jha, thank you very much for inviting me to give address to all of you and the students. I am pleased to launch the National Hackathon in the area of iron making for the challenges faced by Indian integrated steel plant. This is a very timely initiative taken by IP and DIT Sindri. Steel will continue to be a backbone and enabler of the society's evolution in progress. We are a developing country and our consumption, which is today, let's say, approximately around 100 kg per ton, I think last year our production was something around 111 million tons. And this country needs to be, even in the near future, we need to go up to somewhere around 300 kilos per ton. And that's around 300 million tons in about next 10 to 15 years. This has to be fast because if we want all the infrastructure, we want everything, that's the way it should go. The reason why it is so important is because of its property, as Dr. Singh said. We have abundant raw materials. Over a period of time, the technology has evolved such that today the cost of production of steel is available in abundance and reasonably cheaply. Moreover, you have lots the properties of steel, which is high strength, high ductility, and the metallurgists definitely love the way you change properties with heat treatment. And the most important, which we normally don't talk about, is it is infinitely recyclable. So therefore, steel will continue to be a material of choice. However, if we look at various aspects of steel, it now continues, it also has thrown up different challenges and different areas of focus. If one looks at the UN climate goals or look at the World Economic Forum, we will see various aspects which should concern us. For example, the World Economic Forum 2021, out of the five most impactful risks which they talk about, three are connected with climate change, biodiversity, and natural resources like water. Just three out of five. The other two, which are connected with pandemic and weapons of mass destruction, is not a subject today. But the three out of five are connected with climate change, natural resources, and biodiversity. Similarly, if you look at the CO2 generation in the world, I think it is somewhere around 35, 36 giga million tons. Out of that, 8% is generated by steel. 8% CO2 generation is only by the steel industry. Of course, you people have worked with cement, as Dr. Singh said, and cement happens to be 3%. So both these industries are quite challenging industries. Then comes water. Even today, let's say many good plants have come down to 3 or in India, but 3 meter cube per ton is a huge consumption and the world cannot afford it. So in nutshell, both CO2 as well as water and other natural resources seem to be a problem for the steel industry. Industry, I must say, has worked hard to bring down the CO2 consumption in certain plants to 1.8 tons per meter cube. Water has come down to 1.5 in certain plants. So these are the benchmarks. But still, if you see that steel is going to increase for the infrastructure needs of our country or some other developing countries, whom also we cannot deny, the consumption, the generation of CO2 or the consumption of water are going to be matter of serious concern, and there will be issues surrounding that. No wonder, therefore, there will be lots of action groups, both in World Economic Forum, be it investors, be it climate change initiatives, and you will hear about it only next week about in this COP26. Everybody is concerned about it. Also, many of our family members, the new employees, the younger generation, will also be uncomfortable with the way we produce CO2 and consume natural resources. So I am not trying to create a panic or anything like that, but I am just trying to elaborate a challenge which is in front of all of us. It is therefore imperative that the academia and the industry has to join hands for the mutual benefit. And it is heartwarming to be a part of such a noble initiative which will benefit all stakeholders. As I mentioned, the Indian expansion plan has to be based on a sustainable business model. There are several challenges like environmental consideration, productivity of resources, greenhouse gas emission, and also the way we use land, water, and generate CO2. We were talking of change, and while I am speaking, I was just thinking that only 10 years back, if someone had asked me to address this gathering and concerns for the steel industry, what would I have said? I would have spoken about land acquisition. I would have spoken about displacement of people and R&R activities. I would have spoken about environmental clearances from railways and things like this. The issues what I mentioned earlier of CO2, water consumption, natural resources, all would, at least I don't think, were on the radar then. In just 10 years, You see the kind of difference it has made to the thinking of all of us. Fortunately, at the same time, digital engineering has made a substantial progress and is helpful and affordable in all walks of life. This digital engineering and the incubation center what you have, it is now possible to sense, gather data, transmit without error, store, retrieve and analyze the data. If we look at the cost scenario of the Indian steel production, major cost incurrence and variances are noticed till the iron making stage. Also, the biggest contributor process to environmental use and CO2 emission is concentrated around iron making. Therefore, the subject of choice this morning and the way you are going to work around is actually of a great national importance. Though India has large reserves of iron ore and coal, and as mentioned by Dr. Singh, there are some issues about the quality which are unique to India. Therefore, the solutions will have to be evolved which are unique to us. For example, many plants in the world, let's say developing countries like Japan, do not use pelletizing plant. They are only on sinter and this mainly on sinter. Whereas we in India, if you are somewhere around 60 sinter, 40 pellets, that serves us much better than the rest of the world. Now, these are the things which have to be unique to all of us. We are fortunate that all the young minds which are full of energy and innovative thinking are involved in this. In the institute like BIT Sindri, they are getting armed with theoretical knowledge which forms the basis of industrial working. Also, because of the expertise imparted through the curriculum, they have been armed with advanced mathematical tools. To complete the learning cycle, they should be solving real problems, sharpening the application skill. For India to create an impressive growth story, the routine practices will have to be challenged. Innovative approaches will have to be adopted. I think this is what Hackathon is attempting to achieve. Last 20 years is a period of profound change due to technology. It has disrupted many businesses, many business models and supply chain to name the few. It has changed the way we live, work, think and are paid. This change is facilitated for opportunities for young individuals with drive and talent. This particular technological change has facilitated you all to drive the technological change. You are individuals with drive and talent. 40, 50 years ago, one couldn't think of starting a business as it was capital intensive and of course made more complex in India by the license Raj. You are in a different era. You are fortunate to have encouraging ecosystem, lucky to get education in a good institute like BIT Sindri with devoted teachers like Dr. DK Singh and Dr. Prakash Kumar, and there will be many others. All you have to do is to let your instincts and imagination flourish. Also, the phasing proposed in this hackathon, ideation and crystallization are in the right direction. I think in the first phase, focus areas will be identified and then the team will try to find techno-commercial solutions for the selected ideas from the ideation phase, thus creating a practical business case. Going through this exercise, the participants will have a huge all-round development. IP has been formed with very experienced professionals who have learned through and run through various industrial and practical experiences. They hold a track record of exemplary performance in the areas of operation, maintenance, engineering, project management, infrastructure, and associated fields. With the mentoring and guidance and the energy of the participants and the teaching professionals, great outcomes are expected. You are about to enter in an environment where you have opportunity to learn a lot, be it organization, be it people, be it technology. This will help you to expand your horizons, give you sense of what excellence is like, and enable you to see lot of exciting opportunities in times to come. I wish you all the best for a great success in a timely manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your keynote address and citing the current problems faced by the steel industry and your guiding thoughts about current role of students and the colleges. Thank you, sir.
Thank you and wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Bimlin Raja. He is a BTech in ceramic engineering from Banaras Hindu University and a postgraduate diploma in business management, marketing and finance from XLRI, Jamshedpur. He has been associated with Tata Steel Limited and has held multiple leadership roles including CEO, Tata Steel UK and Executive Director on the board of Tata Steel Europe, looking after operations in UK, Sweden and Canada. He has also been the MD and CEO of Ambuja Cement Limited. Sir, kindly deliver your address.
Thank you. As it would happen that a phone would ring at the wrong time. That is not my phone. Sorry. But thank you very much and great to be connected with so many people whom I have known and I have learned from, including Mr. Nerurkar, who is here, Professor D.K. Singh and RR, who has been a friend and a batchmate. Thanks for inviting me here. I really compliment you for this national hackathon and IPE that has brought it together, because we all know that there is a certain base of a triangle that has always been there, where there are students or unskilled people looking for employable skills. There are these educational institutions, and there is the need for deployment of these, particularly the industry that is always looking for employable skills. But there is another element, and probably that makes it either a tetrahedron or a pyramid, whichever way you look at it. It is a large pool of experienced professionals who may have retired or are not in a full-time job. And also bringing them together is a very smart move. And to bring it together into a useful economic engine is even smarter. And that requires a catalyst. It requires a conductor like an orchestra. And most importantly, it requires leadership, and IPE is providing that leadership to make it happen. And I really compliment you for that. As far as the hackathon itself is concerned, I think it is the right step towards creating employable opportunities. And today, US is called the land of opportunity. But India was the original land of opportunity. There were no government jobs that people used to look for. India was the place where people used to be entrepreneurs by their nature. There has been this whole thing about government jobs and bureaucratic jobs that became important probably in the last 300 years since the British came in and tried to even convert our education system into something where clerks can be produced. I think the time has come when India gets out of the shackles of its original, of all the slavery, both mental and physical, that has been there, and create this as a true land of opportunity. We have already seen that since the year 1947, when India got independent, the real independence came only in 1991, when the economic independence came in. But even the economic independence does not get translated into a real independence of thought and action. And that requires unshackling the creative potential of the youth and linking it with the experience that exists amongst people who have been there and seen it. And I think that is why it is so important to have this kind of a forum where everybody comes together. Mr. Nerukar has already identified and illuminated everybody on the challenges for steel. I think there is a Chinese word for problems, or probably in Japanese, which shows a problem is nothing but an opportunity entangled somewhere. So if we look at it from that point of view, today CO2 emission is a big problem. But CO2 emission takes place because we need of energy. In fact, today we spend a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere because we have to deal with some other forms of energy such as heat. We know that in India the temperatures can be really high and you have to use air conditioners. But any engineer would know that heat actually thermodynamically is another form of energy. We know that solar is an energy. And all these need to be harnessed. They need to be harnessed in a manner that what is a problem actually becomes a solution. So when you are thinking hackathon, probably not just when you are thinking on steel or this hackathon on steel, you are conducting several one of these. Start thinking modular. Start thinking a significant unmet need. Start thinking where energy is being utilized today, whereas it can be conserved, where that same form of energy can be utilized in a very different manner. I was working on a project together with Sindri University, where the heat can be actually stored in a physical material. And when there is a need, then just by pouring water over it, that heat gets released. Now, when you already have so much of heat in the environment, can you imagine that all that heat can be easily utilized for drying this material all over again? And once you have dried it, you get back the same storage of heat energy inside that material. But these are things which are only at the laboratory stage. What we need to do is to think modular and bring them into a practical application. Today, everybody talks about solar, but then there are large solar plants and it doesn't help individuals so much. It does help the economy as a whole. But start thinking that how can an integrated modular air conditioning system along with the solar panels can be made in such a manner that it becomes a plug and play. Start thinking, you are talking about ACC sponsored hackathon that happened. Why do we have unmotorable roads in the country? Every road that is made starts with a small crack. That becomes a small pothole. Then it becomes a large pothole. And then it becomes an unmotorable road. I have been to Czechoslovakia and, now Czech Republic. And in Czech Republic, I saw every road, not a single one without repair with very light material which just fills up the cracks. And everywhere you can see those signs. So that means those roads do not become worse. However, if you start looking at from a steel industry's output perspective, what we call as waste, which is a raw material for cement industry, like slag, it has got many properties that can be modified little bit and it can become a fast setting cement for repairing of these roads much faster. Now, deployment of that may not be that much easier. And therefore, if we start working on the deployment part of it, application part of it, something that can be done at village level, taluka level, district level, where the local budgets are sufficient to take care of things, then it becomes a different ballgame altogether. Recently, I was in my village for the Navratri festival. And in the village, I just wanted cauliflower, gobi, and I couldn't get it in the village. I had to go out of the village and get it from there. And there, it was not so fresh. And in 50 square kilometer area, there was not one cold storage. Why can't we start thinking of modular cold storage? What is a cold storage? How much does a refrigerator cost? If there is a 20 or 30,000 rupees worth of a refrigerator, which costs you, which is around 500-liter capacity, you can easily create multiples of that 500-liter capacity as the basic module for cold storage. There are so many of these ideas. So what I would say to the students is that when you are thinking hackathon, start reflecting back on your own experiences. Start reflecting back on the significant unmet need that not only you, your friends, your families, your society, everybody suffers from it. That makes it a sizable market opportunity. And then start working modular so that it becomes affordable. And of course, with a forum like this, you should try to rope in the financial institutions. The funding need not be in the form of doles. When you give funding in the form of doles, actually things become inefficient. On the other hand, a funding requirement that takes care of capital expenditure or a working capital need, or even a model whereby there are people who are able to afford it over a longer period of time, 10 years, 20 years. Those kind of green money can be made available to the people through the same funds, which can go towards covering of risks rather than actually making that money available as a dole. Now, all this is possible together with what you can do through digital. During our times, we had to visualize a phase diagram. Particularly, two-dimensional was okay, but the moment it was three-dimensional, or in case of ceramic, where I come from, it could be 5 or 6-dimensional. And you could never ever see those things. Today, that visualization is possible. And we can actually visualize even inside the blast furnace through making a digital twin. Work on the digital twin, work on the data visualization, work on the simulations that makes it safe to experiment. And when you have done these kind of experimentation in a safe environment, you get the results through a computer simulator, you can then go about actually implementing them much faster. Look at what has happened to the COVID vaccination. It is simulations that have resulted in such a fast development of these RNA vaccines and mRNA vaccines, I'm sorry. And all this has become possible only now. This computational capability did not even exist when we were in the schools and colleges. This is a new India with a level playing field, a flat world where there is no disparity of access to information. You can get best of the professors in the world teaching you simply by accessing it through the internet. So make use of this, convert these significant unmet needs into significant opportunities, and make India a land of opportunity again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It was a very insight talk on paradigm shift in thinking and experimenting, how to look at problems and opportunities and look for the market opportunities around us. Thank you, sir, once again. Our next speaker is Mr. Asit Sinha. He is the director and head India business revenue at DXC Technology. Mr. Sinha is a mechanical engineer from BIT Mesra and has done his advanced management program from London School of Business. Mr. Sinha has held major leadership roles at HP, where he was the India head in the manufacturing and distribution. He was the Vice President, Business Transformation Services at Sutherland Sir, kindly deliver your address.
Sindri, your mic is muted.
Noted.
Yeah.
Yeah, is the voice clear? At least I'm not able to hear.
I am also able to
Not,
hear. I
not.
was about to write.
I
So,
think
Sindri, yeah, probably there is some problem with.
Is there no audio or is
Yeah,
it?
Now it's okay.
now, yes,
it
okay.
is audio, so you can just no. Again, you have put yourself on mute.
No, how's the sound now?
Yeah, so now we can hear. Abhi tak we were not able to hear. We have not heard a single word. So if you can just restart.
Okay, okay, fine, fine. That's yeah. So okay, so I'll start again. I'm really pleased to be here, and please let me know if any sound problem happens. I'm really pleased to be here, and the key thing I was mentioning is that this idea, it's an idea economy, and this economy is driven by people, and people, it's you, the people sitting in the classrooms, in the universities, and in society. And we always think that the idea comes from somewhere, someone else, some other land, some other people. I've seen so many. There's a quotation from Nicholas Negroponte, a futurist, who says, "I've been to the future many times." And essentially, what he was saying is that every 5 years he looks back, and he's seen the world around and the ideas that were in the evolution stage becoming mainstream ideas. And it's us who bring that in. So how do you really think about what's not been thought of before? How do you really bring that change to business? The operating model, for example, in steel, either through your own thought process, the use of technology, communications, velocity, and collaboration. So it's not very complex, but conceptually, but it's a lot about doing it, execution. And it's about innovation, which means that you look inward, you look deep, you understand what you're doing, not at a surface level, but getting real down. And the second part is looking at your landscape like an architecture of a city, where the drainage, the pipes, the sewage is as critical as the buildings on top and the beautiful buildings. And how do you really integrate that story of the buildings, the township? It's pretty much a town planning problem, much as that is a steel making problem or a mining problem that you're dealing with. When you get down to the brass tacks, what you will do in the hackathon of ideas. It's about understanding the architecture of the city and then building the plumbing, the components, and the very sources of value. For example, you plug the sewage of a company, of a town, and that whole city comes to a standstill. Sometimes you never realize the value of sewage, right? So, for example, all the outputs of a steel plant, if you really look at them, there can be huge opportunities there if you understand the sources of value. And I was just looking at, steel manufacturing, and the areas are immense, whether it is the design, the digital twin, the impact of the design area in the construction, the costs that get embedded in design, how it impacts the cost of production, the defect management, predictive analysis. All these areas in terms of an identified possibility are conceptually saturated, but the execution has not happened. And this is where I think this hackathon and the group of people who come up with ideas really need to focus on is that what are those points of value? Is it in the production side? Is it in the production design? And not only that, but the synthesis of how do you monitor and predict the equipment, but how do you design it up front so that the cost of production goes down? That linkage. But how do you, again, the question comes really that how do you do it? How do you think through it? And there's a thought that the building blocks have to be modular. That's why you have to think in terms of architecture. Your architecture is a group of Lego bricks, and your idea could be one Lego brick, it could be two Lego bricks, it could be many put together. But typically what we see in the IT world when you're doing this deep digital engineering is that understanding sources of capacity, unutilized sources of capacity, identifying process breakpoints to create process unification, modularization. Modularization is key. How do you create an independent ecosystem in your plant which can exist by itself as an idea, but when put together, it creates hyperscale or hyper impact for the organization. And that idea can be taken 20 different places, and it impacts the operating architecture of a business. So these opportunities could be in the compliance and standards side. It could be just how do you share knowledge across the entire ecosystem, your suppliers, your customers. But most importantly, how does digital engineering let people touch and feel the processes? Because the real impact that digital is happening is how people interact with the real world processes, and making sure that the information technology is not a floating piece, but the fact that it integrates deep with the technology. And I think that's where it really boils down to. And in this process, I use a word which is very, very often to understand the Lego bricks, to understand modularity. You have to have insanely deep technical know-how. And that's why BIT Sindri is a good starting point, where you know technology, you learn the underlying frameworks, and you're in a region which has some of the most productive steel plants of the world. And go deep, insanely understand that small modular area that you're really looking at, and opportunities and ideas really come in. But how do you do that? How do you do that? And I think how do you search within yourself? How do you look within the Lego bricks? And that's where the stakeholder scenarios, information flow, meshing with physical flow, understanding the data as a fluid. Data is bounded only by geography, security, and compliance needs. Otherwise, you can make data appear once it's created available to a larger place to play with it, and you can process it. You need to find the decisions to solve in its hand. You need to know the decisions, which problems to solve to get that gift of your startup, your idea, your growth, and recognizing patterns in data. And then, most important in your journey of the hackathon is that how do you architect your impact into stories? How do you present it so that you bring a larger group of people to believe your story versus just talking in terms of a presentation or a concept? How do you involve them in a part of your story to make the difference? So I think that's the message I have really, is that ideas are great. Take it one step, one brick at a time, architect that building, and then put them into stories so that the best story comes out. So, with that, all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. It, yeah, thank you, Mr. Sinha, once again. Your thought on digital experience, modular approach, and step-by-step approach to harness the problem was great. So thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed talking to the students also.
Right. So today our next speaker is Mr. Venkatram Srinivas. He is the founder, CEO, and lead researcher of Illumine Knowledge Resources. Prior to Illumine, he co-founded and co-led INFAC, a company that pioneered the production of industry reports. Mr. Srinivas is an alumnus of IIT Mumbai and IIM Ahmedabad. Sir, kindly deliver your address.
Thank you, Mr. Ranjan. And it's a pleasure to be here speaking about and speaking to all of you at the beginning of a hackathon. I would like to use a presentation because it might offer you some specific takeaways that you can then kind of note down or use in whichever way you want. So I will use the next 15 minutes. I'll just walk you through through a presentation, if possible. I don't know whether I'm allowed to share a screen.
Yes. You can always do that. That's what I do. Ravi Shankar, is this okay?
Right now, I'm not allowed. So
Ravi Shankar, can you arrange that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, you can share now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I'd like to use this as the basis for the conversation. How do you really start thinking out of the box if you want to make a difference in this hackathon and do something really valuable? So to start with, we know the term thinking out of the box. It really means that you're not boxed in by certain thinking or certain patterns of or approaches that you have. And so when we say thinking out of the box, what we are saying is that you are stepping out of an existing set of patterns and set of axioms in which you operate, and you try to move into a new set of how you might want to think about it outside the patterns that you are so far. However, what if we start looking at thinking out of the box as saying that it is not, you never really think out of a box, but you really start widening your box. So if, for example, today we are thinking in terms of techno-economic outcomes, if we start shifting our box or widening our box of thinking, because nobody is really ever out of any box. It's just the size of the box or the shape of the box changes. So really thinking out of the box means moving from a smaller box to a much bigger box of thinking. So from the notion of saying that I am here as making a specific techno-economic outcome, how do I move towards working with what I call a contribution purpose? Now, what do we mean by this idea of contribution purpose, and how do you think about it? So contribution purpose really means that the new way of thinking would really be start by asking the question, who are you trying to contribute to? Who are your stakeholders? So think about it. There are economic stakeholders, obviously. There are people who are trying to, who are looking at the economics of the whole thing. How are they going to, create economic value or financial value out of the whole thing? You also have social stakeholders. You have your, you have the community around, you have the environment, you have all kinds of stakeholders who are sitting there as part of your world. There are application stakeholders, because where your products, your whatever you're creating is going to be used by people, and it's going to be end used somewhere down the line. And especially if you take core industries, their applications are cascading down right into the heart of society, or the warp and weft of economic life. So you have application stakeholders across the board who are all beneficiaries, and also they are people whose life, if you want to change, then you might want to start thinking very differently. You have your own domain community of stakeholders, which means that there are people in your field, other experts. You have other colleagues in your place. There is the global community of people in your industry or in your domain whom you are thinking about. You're also thinking about the value chain in which your innovation is going to be used, because you're going to use and that might be both the internal value chain which you're using, which is within your organization, and there is the user value chain. Especially if you use things like digital innovation, you can crash the gaps between the internal value chain of your organization with the user value chain radically. So you might make it into a single seamless whole, for example. Now, these are all examples of how you are thinking about the stakeholders. And when we are saying that I'm having a contribution purpose, the question that we are now asking is that for each of these stakeholders, or for some of these stakeholders, what is the new state of thinking that we want to bring into their life? Or what is this new, new reality that we want to build? So sometimes we can start with a challenge or a problem, but the most exciting innovations take place when I start with an end state in mind. And I say, I really want to shift the needle on this. I want to do something at a level which is a quantum leap over where we are today. And that quantum leap thinking starts coming only when I start thinking about a new reality for each or some of these stakeholders. So that's really what we mean when we say that we start thinking from contribution purpose. If there's a particular application stakeholder, maybe let us say the car industry, then you're saying, how can I radically improve some outcomes in the car industry from where I'm sitting here in an industry that's supplying something to them, or it's providing something to them. So that's an example of what I mean by saying that this is what is the stakeholder contribution that you want to make. So this is the first starting point about what you think about and where you start thinking. The second big issue is, how do you think? Now, this is a very interesting question because, we've got right from the 1960s where you had Edward de Bono talking about lateral thinking, and recently in the last decade, we've had design thinking. So, for the last 30, 40 years, 50 years, there have been all kinds of people who have come and told us, given us techniques for, creative or innovative or lateral thinking. Here's another way of thinking about it, which might actually align with the notion of making a profound contribution, which is you begin with, first of all, as you said, what is that vision that you want in your user's life, or in the end state, or in the, whether in an economic value. If you say that I'm going to bring down costs by 50% now, and that will radically transform, let us say, the supply demand in the and I'm going to radically reduce costs, therefore, to all my stakeholders. It's going to change the economics of maybe hundreds of, buyers and hundreds of users. If that's, for example, even a very simple contribution vision, and there can be much bigger and far more holistic contribution visions that you can build. So how do you first envision that? So a lot of our second thing, which is very interesting, is that nobody is going to really tell you as to what is it that they want. And Steve Jobs famously made that statement that you don't really do a customer survey to find out, because they're really going to come from a current reality. So there is a sound of silence there, but it is in those sounds of silence that you listen. It's when they are not talking about certain things, when it is not even part of the agenda in their conversation, but they are suffering silently, that you start listening. When you start listening and watching users, stakeholders, and you see that they have accepted a current reality. Just think about our own society. You just see how much suffering in our day-to-day life we accept, and there is a sound of silence in everything that we do, whether in the roads we travel, whether in the way we navigate crowds in the country, the way we handle, let us say, urban life in this country, the kind of expectations that we may have from services around us. All that you can hear is not the noise of people, but actually the sounds of silence, of all that silent suffering that's going on. So maybe by listening to that silent suffering of your stakeholders, what you might actually come out with is a solution which is totally different. So market research is good, but I think it is far more important to listen to the gap between the words and to see the buts or the gaps, and to really start thinking from there and saying what can be done. The third thing is, where do we see from? The fact is that the eyes are sitting in our heads. The eyes, you have two eyes, great, but both the eyes are sitting in your head. So those are your eyes. So therefore you are locked into a point of view. And because you are locked into a point of view, your reality will always be only a truncated reality. The more we want to really understand that reality, the more we want to understand what can be done, we need to see through many eyes, which means we have to be willing to say that let me get out of my head alone and also look at it from maybe a user's head, maybe look at it from a worker's head, maybe look at it from a logistics person's head, and maybe look at it from a marketing guy's head. And you can look at it from so many, and when you see from that, you have many different eyes through which you see a problem. And that is when those perspectives build up, and what you start discovering is something else altogether. So it's very interesting that we need to listen to the sounds of silence, and we need to see through many eyes. And the most important thing is, especially if you are working in teams, we talk about collaboration, but what is really collaborating? Collaborating is not tolerating each other and accepting points of view, but it is actually about building on each other, right? So really, when you're looking, whether at a team level, whether you're talking to your stakeholders, whether you're trying to design an answer and trying to work it out, it's how you build on what each other says, what other people say, what the research is saying, what other innovators are saying. It is our capacity to build rapidly on each other that will allow us to ramp up the innovation curve. We can't get from 0 to 100, while we can maybe think of a vision, but in order to go there, we have to still climb. And the longer the distance, we have to climb climb many more steps. And the only way we can climb all these steps is if we climb and build on each other, so that you are able to rapidly climb up and reach that new state that you want. And the next point, which might be what that means, if you want to think differently, you want to do these things differently, you have to be different. Ultimately, it comes down to who you are. If you see yourself only as a designer or as an innovator, that's only one circle out of many. But you need to see yourself. Your own identity should be that of saying, I'm also a researcher. I'm also a catalyst of human potential around me. That means I'm encouraging others also to unleash their potential. And I'm also a radical change player. And I'm also an entrepreneur. And I'm also a builder, which means that we need to widen our own identities. We need to widen our own sense of self. So we don't get locked up as saying, oh, I'm just a student, I'm just a teacher, I'm just I'm good in creativity, so I'm just an innovator. No, I'm much more. I'm just a great contributor. And I think that if you just start out by saying I'm a contributor, then this whole new thinking starts really emerging and starts building. And given the time constraint, I just want to quickly end with one last point as a starting point for your thinking. These are big ideas. But if you really want to start, then here's the thought that I think you can start with, which is that don't just start with a specific challenge or a outcome alone. That's a good place to start, but also start by asking what human or what social or organizational or domain purpose or vision you want to serve, or what you want to make happen in the world. So begin with what you want to make happen, rather than only what challenge you solve, and then you will start your journey of being a contributor. So with these few words, I'd like to stop here, and I hope some of this is useful to you.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivas. It was, new thinking, contribution purpose way of thinking, and really something like, what do I bring to the table of all these stakeholders which will excite them? This was a wonderful thought. So thank you, Mr. Venkatram. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. D.N. Jha, who has done the BSc Engineering in Electronics and Communication from BIT Sindri and PG Diploma in Management from XLRI Jamshedpur. He joined Tata Steel in 1980 and has worked in multiple fields like commissioning, maintenance, project and engineering in the areas of coke, sinter, pellet and iron making. He has superannuated from Tata Steel in October 19 as GM Design and Engineering. At present, he is Director in IPE. So over to you, Mr. D.N. Jha.
Good afternoon. Sorry for some of the disturbances which happened, particularly in the start of the confusion. I think it's time that we have to sum up the thoughts which have been said before. Our chief guest has said about the importance of steel as backbone of society. So therefore, if you really see about the development of any country, steel forms one of the great measures of development index. And as our consumption is around, let's say 100 kg per 100 kg per person per year. Now, if we look at the developed world, it's more than 450 kg per person in the developed world. So that brings us towards the future of steel, and also why steel is recyclable, and therefore it has many properties and therefore becomes a material of choice for nearly all businesses. So for any development, steel in the foreseeable future, the steel will continue to be a material of importance. If we look at the present scenario versus the scenario which existed a decade back, there are sustainability issues which are very important. And out of them, three of them, for example, say the climate change, the use of natural resources, and biomass gets the priority. And it is in this context that because of the steel industry, which is a great contributor to the CO2 emission and therefore the climate change, steel industry's role becomes very vital. Now, although the cement industry also contributes, but it is at the level of 3% of the total CO2 emission. India, if we look at, because of the various opportunities which have come about now, is poised to take a great leap forward because we have the pool of natural resources. That means we have huge reserves of iron ore and coal. We have, let's say, the steel plants, the capacity of which the government of India has said that we should be expanding quite a lot by 2030, if I'm not mistaken, about 300 million tons per annum in production. So, which would be a little more than what is existing today. So, but the challenges are in terms of the CO2 emission, the water consumption. And if we look at the biggest contributor towards this, the iron making forms the most significant area where we have to concentrate, and that is why the theme of this hackathon tries to focus on that. We need to take action, and hackathon provides this as a quick opportunity of bringing the academia and then in industry together. And since all businesses have to be viable, therefore the cost becomes the focal point. Uh, the waste utilization is another factor on which our chief guest talked about. And if we look at the cost scenario, the maximum amount of the cost is incurred up to the unmaking stage. And therefore, this hackathon assumes great importance. There's been tremendous change. Everybody has been impacted for the betterment, and that is with the advancement of the digital engineering. The country, the bureaucracy, and other factors have changed for the good, and there's no more license rules. The things can be done much more easily, and it provides us the opportunity of growing with unprecedented growth rate. Now, Mr. Bimlin Raja, who is said about a different way of addressing the things, and very rightly he focused about, let's say, the potential that is existing. So we have large pool of experienced professionals. At the same time, we have young minds, and how we can together we can harness this for a much synergistic output. So the bureaucracy, India, as he said, that India has been a land of opportunities. We have to again bring it back to the same, which somehow in last 300 years we lost, and we focused on bureaucracy rather than a land of opportunity. And we have to focus on the economic development, economic independence. And for that, his suggestion has been to think modular, work on a smaller scale, and which can be expanded. I gave example of, let's say, the energy or the requirement of a cold storage. And so if you make a cold storage on a smaller scale, and that you can, if you have a larger requirement, that can be expanded. Similarly, we can translate these ideas into every walk of life, and through the hackathon also, we should try and do that. Also, he talked about, let's say, the greater opportunities, because there are problems, and the problems actually should be seen as opportunities. So the same thing can be viewed with different angles. So, like the example of Czech Republic, say, sealing the crack in the road before it becomes not motorable at all, say, going into cracks and then potholes and so on. But if you patch it with the waste, think about it. So it is actually thinking in different manner. And he has also emphasized upon the opportunity which is present in terms of the digital technology which has come about and which is affecting all walks of life. Mr. Asit Sinha also has been, he has said that we look at the problems in different components, look at it as Lego blocks, solve one problem, and then we try and integrate. With the integration, the value creation is much more than what we think as individual components. So the building blocks also should be modular. We should we should look at the capacity where it is unutilized. We should improve the utilization. We should we should have ideas which can have hyper impact. And the digital revolution has impacted all people. The way we behave, the way we conduct our day-to-day business, from there to all the industrial scenario, or all the business scenario. So this we have to create our own story, and then we have to present. And digital engineering forms a big enabler for that. Mr. Venkatraman, Mr. Srinivas Venkatraman, I think he has very impressively talked about the way we should be thinking. So normally we consider thinking in a very mundane manner. But once we say that what is thinking out of box is defined, like what is really thinking out of the box. The widening, basically everybody still will have some boxes, but if we improve the dimension, increase the dimension of the box, then we say that it is out of box. So how do we think about out of box? And so he's talked about different techniques, like say from the stakeholders, from the contribution, whom are we contributing, who are the stakeholders, think it from those perspective. And then what is really sound of silence instead of market research. So think about the sufferings which are not stated, but you observe. So it really is applicable to all the things. And I'm very happy that all the speakers have contributed towards the goal further. And our task before us is now we'll have the hackathon, which will be created in 2 phases. That is the first phase is ideation, where on the 3 problems we'll try and find out what are the key problems that we can address. And those problems we'll try and analyze with respect to the impact that it will have, and with respect to the cost that it incurs, and with respect to the ease of implementation. So, like I said, so these this would be, and in the second phase, after we scrutinize those ideas or problems into the more significant ones in the second phase, that is crystallization phase, the teams will be working deeply on that, and will have the techno-commercial proposal, and which we'll say we say as the business cases. So that's how we'll take the step forward. I think both BIT Sindri site as well as IP site will provide a link to register for that, and that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dianja, for nicely summing up the entire proceedings. So in the end, once again, I would like to thank all the speakers, Dr. D.K. Singh, Mr. Hemant Nururkar, Mr. Bimlin Raja, Mr. Ases Sinha, Mr. Venkatram Srinivas, and Mr. Dianja for sharing their valuable thoughts to us on this occasion. Thank you, all the speakers. And I would like to...
My apology, I could not mention about Dr. D.K. Singh. Actually, he talked a lot about, let's say, why this hackathon is important and how we are let's say, we have come together, the IP and VIT Sindri, and how, say, why we selected this area. So he talked in detail about it. My sincere apologies on that.
It's not a issue, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Sahab, once again to you. And I would like to thank all the participants, faculty and students of VIT Sindri, and the professionals who have joined this function and given their valuable time to attend this launch functions. So thank you, all of you. And I would also like to thank VIT Sindri for co-hosting this program on Hackathon. And I would not be completing my task if I do not thank Mr. R.R. Jha, our National President of IPE, without whose vision and initiative this program would have not been possible. So thank you, sir, once again for your valuable contribution to IPE and especially for this hackathon. And in the end, I would like to thank all the members of IPE without whose support this function would have not been possible. So, Mr. Jha, you wanted to say something? Yeah, okay. So, this brings us to the end of the launch function. Thank you once again to all of you. Thank you.
So thank you to the team IP and the team VIT Sindri led by Professor Prakash Kumar and D.N. Jha Sahab team. Sir, thank you very much, and I hope in the coming days this activity is going to have a greater impact in this part of the country. Thank you very much, Ranjan sir.
Thank you,
all the experts and
this is
all the participants from our side. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Prakash.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much for starting the beginning.
I think there is a voice problem, audio problem. Vikasji, is it over?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
it
thank
is
you,
over.
sir. Thank you very much to the team of IP, D.N. Jha Sahab, Amendra Ranjan Sahab, Rajesh Jha Sahab, and all the members for taking this initiative. I think, sir, your initiative is going to bring a qualitative change in the teaching learning process, and will be in the coming days we are going to solve many problems. I think, and the industry is going to get the benefit of this collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, doctors. Thank you.